Hey, hello, good evening, and welcome to the BMU network. Anyway, make sure, hopefully, everybody can hear me when you come in. Just put a one in the chat when you do. I think everything is all systems go. And so, good evening. So, uh, it's political season. So, we got to talk about, rights and things of that nature, right? So, I'm looking at uh, one of the things that helped me start to transition from my thought process from voting the way I did to where I'm at now. So I titled this one The Fall of American Rights and Freedoms. But what's missing from here is also liberalism, censorship, and the rewrite of Title IX is all a part of this transition that we're making. And I wonder if it's only me or can anybody else recognize that our rights are being eroded? Uh, and it's not even that subtle, to tell you the truth. It's so just like my mode of operandi, I have videos, and I'm gonna try to piece together some things for everybody, so we can kind of draw the dots. And when it's time, I'll just drop the link. Anybody wants to come up and chit chat about how they see things going. And then I have something for the ladies. I have a question for you guys, uh, because I think there's a lot of dichotomy on your side. I think a certain amount of black men are starting to say, you know what, what's in it for me? And I know women always say, well, what's in it for me? And I think you guys think you see what's in it for you, but I think you'll have a dilemma on your hands. For both candidates, by the way. Do you want to vote for the brash man who's a man's man, who grabs him by the putty woody and that kind of stuff? And that bothers a lot of women. I know a lot of women refer to that a lot. Or do you want a woman who, on one hand, is for unfettered rights, for deleting babies, and also the destruction of Title IX? So these are some things that you guys have to wrestle with before November 5th. So it'll be interesting to talk about it. So I'm gonna try to piece together again some of these things you've already seen. I had like these cartoon explanations that are pretty good. They're real short and sweet, and it'll be something that so I can piece together, liberalism, conservatism, and the First Amendment and how that applies. Hey, A team, how you doing? Welcome aboard. And so we're gonna, before I get started, I'm gonna just go ahead and kind of warm things up. Like I said, I have a lot of videos, and I have some thoughts I want to get across. And I think hopefully by the end, I will be able to kind of piece some of this stuff together so we can all say, oh, you know what, that makes sense. And so come November 5th, and when it's time to vote, we can vote, objectively. Hey, boss man, what's going on, man? How you doing? Man, I see some of your shows, but I have like a conflict that night that you're on, but my brother. But hey, listen, I'm gonna catch one of your full shows sooner or later. Yes. So here we go. We'll just kind of warm things up and see who else comes into the stream. Yeah. So and we can get rolling. And there's no ado, because I got a few things I gotta go through. First, while people are starting to come in, I might as well do a couple things. One, I'm gonna copy this, so I'll have it. Just copy the link, and I'm gonna share with you guys, and we could talk about this, because I think before we're gonna talk about the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Rights, or the First Amendment. We might as well put it up. Now I think you guys can see this. I think it's big enough. The First Amendment, right? Some people say, and I don't think I disagree with it, that this is the most important amendment that there is. Some people may argue with that, but this is the one kind of encompass our freedom, right? To go from east to west, north to south, to say what we want, a freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, to petition the government, freedom of religion. Good evening, Milani. How you doing? So these are the kind of things I think are being eroded. And I believe everybody in the chat can see for their own life experiences, or can say from your own life experiences, do you believe that to be true or not? We have a certain amount of freedom for religion, but it's not freedom from bigotry on certain religions. Uh, do we really have freedom of speech, or did Elon Musk save it? Just for now, by the way. And then he has his own form of censorship, by the way, even with X. Do we have freedom of press? Do we really? The press is biased, and we all know it. At first, it was just Fox News, and then we thought everybody else was the fair players. Then it turns out now Fox News seems like a wet noodle compared to the rest of the media in this presidential campaign, because it's clear that all the other media is for Kamala Harris. Hey, Black Hawk, how you doing? So again, we don't even have to point fingers. I think if anybody's alive and breathing, we could tell the biasness in all the media one way or the other, right? So is it really free? Or are they beholden to the corporate, the board of board of directors and the corporations that tell them what to say and how to put their propaganda out there? And Americans, unfortunately, we ain't that smart, man. In mass, propaganda works on us, and it works on us really well. Freedom to assemble, well, they actually challenge the fact that you have to have a petition. Right. So I'm going to go through a couple of these things. And then freedom to petition the government. There are some people who believe January 6th was no more than exercising your freedom to petition the government. There are some people who believe that. And even if that were true, there were some guys who have more nefarious motives than that. But the real bottom line is this. If you don't succeed in getting your point across, then to the victors go the spoils. And right now, you failed in your attempt. And that's why so many people are going to jail. Anyway, so without further ado, I see we have a few people in here. Make sure you hit the like button on the way in. But I want to get started with the first video. It's very short. And that one is about the First Amendment itself. Very, very sharp. I'm going to stop it along the way, by the way.
The First Amendment protects freedoms of speech, press, religion, assembly, and petition. This sounds straightforward, but the First Amendment is still the subject of continuing interpretation and dispute. So let's look at the freedom of speech, which gives Americans the right to express themselves without fear of government interference.
Well, I stopped it too soon, right? So let's just say this one more. Let's go back for a second.
Without fear of government interference.
Okay, so is that really true? We already know that government interferes with the freedom of speech. We're living through it. We saw what happened in 2020. We saw what happened with not only the C-19, but with the Hunter laptop. And believe it or not, it's real subtle. The first censorship thing with the laptop, Trump was still president, by the way. It was in the midst of an election year, but he was still president. And then when C-19 turned over and the real censorship began, C-19 was under Biden. So this is kind of bipartisan, but there's one group that's a little bit more keen on censoring speech than the others. That's why until Elon Musk bought X, you pretty much couldn't get any conservative stuff across without getting it deleted. And we'll talk some more about that as we go. So there's a couple of stops I have on this very short video, by the way. But the first one is this freedom of speech. Is that really true? I mean, in principle, we have it, but is it really true? Now, the second part of freedom of speech is that you are not exempt from public responses to whatever you say. Even if it's correct, even if it's right. You can't stop the public from retaliating in terms of verbally against your positions. Freedom of speech doesn't protect you from that or the consequences that come along with that. That's where cancel culture comes from. There's people who are being canceled when they're dead right, okay, because the propaganda can make them like enemy number one, especially if it's against certain protected groups and those kind of things. And we all know about which protected group gets protected the most. And it ain't black people, by the way. It certainly ain't. All right, so I think we're all straight with that one. Let me continue this.
There are a number of categories of unprotected speech, including obscenity, true threats, incitement to imminent lawless action, and defamation.
Let me stop. Excuse me, I had a cough there. Let me stop it again right here. Right, we understand these four exemptions, right? But the one that they're trying to get Trump on is excitement to imminent lawless action. I believe that's at the cornerstone of, and I don't know, boss man, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one. If you really read between the lines of those indictments of January 6th, that's the one they're trying to get Trump on. And they don't got a prayer in the world making that stick. They just don't. They can sully his name, they can do all that kind of stuff. But to draw that hard line where you're going to put him and make him guilty in a fair court, I don't see it happen. I really don't.
But deciding what speech falls within these categories is difficult. In reaching these determinations, courts often look at speech on a case-by-case basis and consider the context in which the speech was made. For instance, political speech, support or opposition of political figures, parties, and/or policies, enjoys stronger First Amendment protection. If speech is political in nature, no matter how outrageous and offensive it might be, it may still be protected by the First Amendment. So, yeah, this gets complicated. The First Amendment protects you from government punishment for what you say in most instances. However, the First Amendment is not unlimited. It protects you from government action, not the action of private organizations or people. Unless you're employed by the government, complaining about your boss could get you fired. Similarly, since social media websites are for the most part private entities, they're the only ones who can police posts.
All right, so let me stop there on social media, right? Again, I think all of us who are the real content creators and folks like me just kind of fool around with it and kind of enjoy dabbling in the social media space and putting your thoughts out on YouTube or Facebook or now I know I'm shadow banned on Facebook, that's for sure. Things of that nature. Now I have this. I don't know if I coined this term or not, but I have a term I call subjective objectivity. Right? I put those two together because depending on who runs these companies, whether they're left leaning or right leaning, whether they're black or they're white, they're subjective on who they censor and who they don't. And the subjectivity comes in with if they're right leaning, well, mostly they're or mostly left leaning. But if they're left leaning and you put some stuff out, that they don't like, they'll become objective in trying to find one of their code of conduct that fits, however loosely what you said, to take your post down. And a lot of times that's how we know that YouTube works that way, but they're not the only one. Right. So if they don't like something, they'll take it down and they'll give you some obscure reason why they did it, because a lot of their rules you could drive a truck through. Okay. And a lot of content creators who lose their channels never really get a good answer for why what they said is getting punished. So this is the kind of leverage they have, and you can't really get them on free speech. I'll give you another example. Remember, there was a chick named Cynthia G, and her channel had almost 200,000 subscribers. And all she talked about with her hyenas were deleted male babies in the womb, right? And obviously, whoever saw her content knew what she was doing, but they left her stuff up there for years, and it took a white woman to shame YouTube for taking away her channel. There wasn't nobody black. Out of all the complaints that they must have gotten, it took a white woman to get that taken down. So there you have it. So they're subjectively objective when it benefits them. I tell you, if it wasn't for Elon Musk, who has his own level of what he wants to censor too, even on X, for the most part, you could at least get clean liberal and clean conservative issues in there, right? He also lets other things go on X that a lot of other places won't let happen. But at least you can get your point out without getting your post deleted, unless it's really one of those 4 things that it needs to get taken down on. So I give him kudos. Listen, I don't care what people, especially black folks, I don't care whether you like Elon Musk and because you think he's racist and all that kind of stuff. If it wasn't for him, it would be 2 things I think we'll be really, really woefully behind on. There's free speech and technology.
On their respective sites. Similar to freedom of speech, freedom of the press allows people to express themselves through publication. This important freedom enables our journalists and reporters to freely report news and stories of public interest. But this
listen, this whole freedom of the press thing and people can freely put their stuff out there, that's absolute bullshit, okay? You got to go through editors. The editors got to go through who runs the company decides what gets put out and what doesn't, right? Is that a form of censorship? Yeah, because everybody's not going to get equal billing. If I'm right-leaning, I'm going to put right-leaning stuff out there. If I'm left-leaning, I'm going to put left-leaning stuff out there. That's why blood leads and, death leads and good news stories don't get money. So they actually are in it to make money. And since there's a profit motive, they damn sure discriminate as to what they're going to put out on the air and what they're not going to do. And of course, there's no real journalists anymore. Everybody's like a freelancer, and we have to hear their opinions on a story before we even hear what the story is. That's how I see it. Now, everybody doesn't have to see it that way, but that's what's going on.
This also comes with some limitations. For instance, defamatory statements are not protected. Again, though, what constitutes defamation also requires a fact-intensive investigation. In addition, the First Amendment protects our right to peacefully assemble or gather together as a group for like-minded social, economic, political, or religious purposes. The First Amendment also protects our right to protest the government. We are free to sign petitions or even file a lawsuit against the government as well. And lastly, in guaranteeing the freedom of religion, the First Amendment prohibits the government from establishing a state religion or from favoring one religion over the other.
All right, so we could stop that right there.
The First Amendment.
It was stopped. All right, I appreciate you looking at that one. That stopped. All right, so let me stop sharing this. Okay, which I did. Hey, Embrace, how you doing? John, Ed, how you guys doing? Welcome to the chat. Listen, so again, I just wanted to go over what the First Amendment is. I guess everybody knows it. It's, to me, the most important amendment we have. I know some people will say it's the second, but I disagree. All right, so keep that in mind. Some of the things that I stopped about in terms of, what's really free and what you can say. And I'm going to tie that to the next clip that I'm going to show right away so we don't lose anything in terms of, liberalism and conservatism, because that's where I want to start to draw down this string from, because I think a lot of this is connected to the First Amendment, so here we go. So stay tuned for the next one. Hey, Angry Snowman, what's going on? Let me see what you got to say. Yeah, the first is the first for a reason. So let's get to the second one. We're going to talk a little bit about conservative. I showed this once before on a different feed, and we're going to show it again. All right.
When it comes to the social elements of the state, the two major ideologies that philosophers focus on are conservatism and liberalism. Conservatism is associated with beliefs that a country or state should hold tradition and custom as the most important aspects of their society. Conservatives do not like the idea of social change unless it is absolutely necessary. Conservatism basically favors long-standing traditions of culture, religious beliefs, or national defined beliefs. I see. Conservatism carries patriotism for the nation state and believes that our belonging to a nation with a history of beliefs and culture brings us and the people in our nation closer together. Our national identity, our social structures, norms, values have been built up over thousands of years through many generations to shape us and make us who we are, and conservatism believes this should be preserved and protected. Yes, I understand. However,
Well, let's go out for before the however, right? About the conservatives. I agree everything with what he says, but one of the things that it takes to be conservative, right, and to maintain culture and tradition and status quo to somewhat, it takes discipline, right? It takes restrictions, control, shame, and a belief in that it's important to maintain those traditions, right? So that takes work. That's work. It takes, you know, conservatives are not necessarily against change because the world was kind of conservative before the West took over it, and change happened because growth happens, and it has sometimes things have to change necessarily in order to keep up with the times and the more population and things of that nature. But the conservative likes evolutionary change, not revolutionary change. And revolutionary change is very chaotic and it can spin out of control. So if we look at the way the country has evolved into where it is today, when they talk about the good old days, right? They tell black people, say, when was it good? Blah, blah, blah. That same old trope bullshit. Good means that at one point there was traditions and cultures and families that you could rely on. There was a sense of society, even if it was split, right, into two or the three. There was things we could lean on that gave us strength to move forward and to build on, right? Even if there was, coming out of Jim Crow and all of those things. Now it's every man for himself, every woman for himself, and the society is disjointed, and traditions are gone, culture is gone, shame is gone. All of these things are gone in a short period of, I guess, since the civil rights movement. Not just because it was civil rights, it was also the pill. There was also other things, third, fourth wave feminism, the crack era. It was all kinds of shit that broke us up to where we are today. And so we're going to let the liberal talk about what is most important to the liberal now.
Last century or so, we've seen radical social changes across the Western world, the whole world, in fact. As human beings, we're a creature that is always changing. We're learning, we're evolving, so of course there are going to be social changes because we as people are always changing. Okay, but conservatism isn't against change completely, but rather it believes this change should be a slow or gradual process. It could be referred to as organic change. Conservatives understand there is a social change, but would like to control it and ease it in piece by piece so as to not disturb the wider web of society. It doesn't believe in radical change or any form of revolutionary change in a society. Well, there has been radical change and revolutionary change in many parts of the world, and a lot of this has been beneficial. Conservatism is concerned with social culture, but there have been many cultures of oppression and subjugation around the world, and conservatives would argue that this still needs to be protected. It is because of this that I favor liberalism. Liberalism is based on the political philosophy centered around the individual. The individual should have as much personal freedom as possible, providing their freedom does not affect anyone else other than the individual.
All right. So I think you guys got that. But let me play a little bit more.
Personal freedom as possible, providing their freedom does not affect anyone else other than the individual.
All right. So let me just stop it right there. If what he said about the individual freedoms was cool because it doesn't impact any other individual, I think people could live with that, right? Because we all, want the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But that's the one thing that is not true. The individual rights, especially for protected groups, actually does infringe upon the rights of other people, right? And, so especially based on what the people, those special groups want. And we have, of course, for anything, blacks were a special group at one time. And just having the freedoms to be able to vote and buy houses and get and reduce redlining, that's one thing, okay? And I think that's all fair because we're all Americans. And of course, I'm going to be biased. But now we have a special group that we can't even mention their name on social media without taking down a whole your whatchamacallit. And they have our politicians both greased at the skids. And then we have a special group, the alphabet. How you doing, daughter? Then we have a special group called the Alphabet Mafia, and they absolutely want to infringe upon everybody else's freedom. And I don't have to go down the whole sordid list of what they want to do in this country. I just think they're pissed off enough that we have to even entertain those stupid ass pronouns. So yeah, so they absolutely, your individualism is impacting other people's right to happiness or pursuit of happiness, because nobody wants to go along with that. If you could just kept that into your own little corner, then maybe we could live together, right? So there's a lot to be worked, and there's a choice to be made on November 5th. Anyway, so let's continue.
So for liberals, tradition and culture and custom are not important at all, and they see no value in upholding these. It is just down to what the individual wants, how the individual wishes to act or to dress or to live. It's all about personal freedom and giving each person the most amount of freedom possible. Interesting. In the last century or so, liberalism has really taken over in the Western world and shaped our beliefs of toleration and respect for all human beings, no matter how different they are. Yes, okay, but liberalism does run into its own problems. If too much emphasis is put on personal freedom, nation states may find themselves in a situation where all their citizens are completely different, where there is no national culture or common beliefs. Too much differentiation can break down our sense of community, togetherness, our sense of being one. We are then left with a nation of lots of individuals, but no unity or common beliefs or culture. Yes, I see the argument.
All right. I see the argument too, but does anybody else see that argument? Uh, now, what I'm going to do is anybody wants to come up and talk about that specifically, the difference between liberalism and not, I'm going to just put the link here anyway, because I got more videos to go through, but I don't mind having the company. So the link is in the chat. Anyway, oh yeah, hey Bantu, hello, how you doing? Listen, I just tell you, what the guy said on the liberal side is exactly the way it is now. And I guess I'm old enough to know that in the absence of culture, in the absence of shame, in the absence of Christ, or in the absence of anything that puts discipline into our lives, we got what we got going on today, right? Marriage rates in the toilet, deletion rates are as bad as they ever have been. Nobody wants to work together. Men and women don't trust each other enough to have covenant marriages that'll last for a lifetime, or even long enough to make a difference. Single parenthood is destructive, all that kind of stuff. Hey, and JT, what's going on, man? You coming up? All right, cool. Well, you just hear the background. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off? I had to the stage. What's up, JT? What's going on, man? You got something to say, or you just hanging out? No, you popped up. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you are going to speak. You're on mute. If you're just hanging out, that's cool. Anyway, again, let me see. I got a couple of things here. Let me see. The problem is in America, culture is that the nation of multiple cultures. So it's impossible just that you listen. Okay, so maybe boss man, I have in this question that you have up there, or this statement that you made here, you're right and you're wrong because it's not to have any dominant culture. At one point, we were on the path to having what we would call an American culture. The thing that made America great, I mean, really great, was that when people came here, there was a willingness to assimilate into what we call an American culture. Doesn't matter if you look Chinese or African or Scandinavian, Spanish or whatever. There was, I guess, a mental barter system that says we can all taste the American dream. Besides the racism that was there, a lot of that stuff people just wanted to live. So America started to build its own culture, and unfortunately, we only really get to see it on display in sporting events or in war, right? Uh, a lot, right? They publicize those things, and maybe some parties and some big tragedies, or when we used to have technology, everybody was proud about the space program and things of that nature. So nobody is saying one culture had to dominate, but the American culture, for example, I didn't think it was anything wrong when new immigrants came in the legal way, and they all had to learn English, especially if they were under a certain age, right? Because English would be our universal language, right? You know what I'm saying? That bound us together. Okay. All right. So so that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. You know. So I hear where you're coming from, and you're right. So it's no right or wrong, but that's a viewpoint. But as an older viewpoint, I remember, even as a black guy, there was certain pride when especially if we went abroad, people, looked at us just as Americans. That's why a lot of our troops, when we left, got treated better when they were in Europe and got treated like shit when they came home, right? Because people viewed us as Americans. That's not a good thing, but it started to change, and then boom, it seems like after the civil rights movement and after we started coming out with these social programs and a lot of other factors, those things started to split apart. Okay, so what did Edward say? All right, well, what's the bill we talking about? Anyway, so listen, I just say that I don't know if that answered your question or your thought, boss man. I think as living in the modern era, I hear where you're coming from, and it seems like we're more of a salad bowl than a melting pot that was the great dream of America. I mean, not necessarily, when they founded the place. We all know that they founded this country to be a haven for white people, but when they wrote the document, it was great enough to include all people, and it still is one of the best documents out there, right? So nobody can really argue that. All right, so what's next? Um, I want to kind of go into the fact that we are living in a time where censorship prevails, and a lot of people don't understand that it's not. I'm blaming on the Biden Harris regime because they really took censorship to all-star level, and a lot of people they had plausible deniability because nobody would come forth and say, yeah, about censorship until Mark Zuckerberg, and so when Mark Zuckerberg made his own admission about censorship, we started to understand that what there's a reason why you can't say what you say on these social platforms. But not only that, it was not only the social platforms that wanted to take you down. They were in cahoots with the government. And if you go back to the first video, the government is not supposed to be behind making people take down information, but they absolutely were. They absolutely were. So let's just go. I'm gonna share that one with you. Let's go and talk about Zuckerberg's admission, because I think that was huge, and I think it's a mistake. I think it's a bad thing that it didn't get more press. I mean, this guy, Facebook is, no matter what you think about Facebook, a Meta right now, the stock is going out of this world. So it's high tech. It's still relevant. They're expanding and everything else. So here's Zuckerberg in his own words, and it would tell you how important it was for him to have acquiesced to the government.
We do turn now to a story breaking overnight. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg claims he was pressured by the White House to censor content related to COVID-19 during the pandemic. Aaron Katersky joins us now with details. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning to you, Whit. For years, critics have taken aim at Facebook for silencing views that challenge the general consensus in the medical community, especially about the origin of COVID-19. Now, Facebook's founder surprisingly says they're right. This morning, Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg admitting he bowed to pressure from the Biden administration to censor content. The Facebook founder issuing a letter to the House Judiciary Committee that said senior administration officials pushed the social media platform to censor posts about COVID-19 and expressed a lot of frustration when the company resisted. Zuckerberg saying, "I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it." Adding, "I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again." President Biden was asked about misinformation online in the summer of 2021.
On COVID misinformation, what's your message to platforms like Facebook? They're killing people. I mean, it really, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated, and they're killing people.
Biden later walked back the comment, insisting he wasn't attacking Facebook. Overnight, the White House responded to Zuckerberg's letter. "Our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present." Zuckerberg going on to express regret for demoting content related to corruption allegations against Hunter Biden ahead of the 2020 election, alleging the FBI warned information circulating online was a Russian disinformation operation. It's since been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation, and in retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. Zuckerberg went on to say the company has changed its policies and processes to make sure it doesn't happen again. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan celebrating the letter, calling it a big win for free speech.
All right, so we could stop it right there. Again, was it a big win for free speech? No, really, was it? Yeah, I think so. I think that the story is being underreported and undertold. I think it's huge that the government was involved in squashing stories. It got Twitter to post an actual news organization off Twitter when they wanted to dive deeper into the Hunter Biden laptop. Would that thing have been deflammatory or inflammatory against Biden's run for presidency? Maybe, maybe not. But is that, this is a question for you guys in the chat. Does the news, the social media organization have an obligation to hold information back because they're afraid it might impact the election if that information is true? The fact that a government agency, the FBI, will, or CIA would put out misinformation in order to ensure that they protect who they want to protect. You know what I'm saying? So, so there you have it. So I think that in my choice, I think free speech is a must. I don't think they had the right to do what they did. It may have changed the election, but hey, that means the people are voting with all the information as opposed to partial information. And putting Biden in the White House allowed his son to continue with his nefarious ways. Right? And now we understand what the real truth is. So, I think once you start trying to push, once the veil comes off over your eyes, I think you get a chance to see what's really going on out there. Now, some people rather stay ignorant not the pejorative ignorant, but to stay, unknowing, ignorant of the facts, because there's a certain comfort in not knowing that you're being done dirty, especially if it doesn't kind of impact you physically, maybe, but the truth of the matter is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you see the okie doke, you really can't unsee it. And the fact that you can't unsee it should give you angst, that you might want to do something different. So, just continuing along with that. All right. So how does this impact, how does this censorship impact, the speech? It impacts other areas, right? Because, censorship coming from the government and social media has a certain amount of a certain impact, right? And staying the truth also has an impact. And I think that's where the silent majority comes from. There's people who understand and know the truth, but they're afraid to say it because they can get canceled. They could lose jobs. They could lose money. They could lose things like that, especially if they know the government is against them, right? Because their arms are not that long to box with the government. So that's when they say, hey, this is a silent majority, I believe that's where it comes from. People who look out for their own interests because the truth doesn't necessarily benefit them if it's out there, other than for them to be right, So let me continue on this path because I'm leading to Title IX at some point, right? And why the fact that we're letting certain things erode is going to impact, us. All right. So let me share something from Megyn Kelly. And we'll go from there.
And we've covered the dangerous ideology that has been forced on us and our children, in our schools and our communities at length. From the genital surgeries on healthy young boys and girls, cutting off perfectly healthy body parts, to the detransitioners who've been hurt by this insane ideology, who then get ignored by the media and rejected by the community that love bombed them into doing this to themselves in the first place. We've discussed many times the impact on sports as boys and men invade women's spaces and sports and take their prize money and take the glory of winning away from them in matches that are neither fair nor safe. Back in June of 2023, it was episode 564 that I stated publicly after I had on Kelly J. Keene, who really convinced me that it was time to stop using these so-called preferred pronouns. I have resolved to base my conversations around gender on the same tenets that already govern my life, truth and reality. I will not use preferred pronouns. A decision motivated by a growing alarm over women's rights and the safety of children. I will speak to a trans person kindly and with empathy. In their presence, I will likely try to avoid pronouns altogether, as I have no wish to intentionally provoke or upset anyone. But I will not take this gateway drug anymore because I have a daughter, because I am a woman, an adult human female. I get emotional just hearing that. It's just what we've done to ourselves, what we've done to our kids, what we've done in seeding this whole argument to the trans activists who are the worst people. Honestly, they're just so vicious. They're men. 9 times out of 10, it's men posing as women who try to stifle and shut up women and girls who are speaking up for themselves and their rights. It's gone on for too long. While we were all asleep, they got laws changed in state after state. And only now has the sleeping giant been awoken.
All right, let me stop that right there for a second, okay? I'm stopping it there because even though we've ushered in age of the weakest men I think ever has been in America, this is mostly women's fault. I think that because women didn't go apeshit crazy like BLM when they announced Bruce Jenner as the Woman of the Year, they couldn't see the fact that all of this was going to lead to the destruction of Title IX. And men who want to be women because, and I believe this to be true, even though I have no psychological data, is because they didn't want to continue to have pressures of being a man, which is, I believe, a whole lot more pressure bound than being a woman. Even though women might not agree with that, but I'm saying it. We weren't born with the inherent value that women have been born with. We have to earn our keep every single day. And I think there's men out there who would say, shit, my life would be much easier if I was a woman. And especially when it comes to sports, right? Because I can't see any other reason other than some psychological imbalance that would make a man want to do that and then compete against actual natural born women. So, but women brought this shit upon themselves because they have no foresight to see that men don't just share shit. We conquer. And so just because a man puts on a dress doesn't mean he doesn't want to conquer that space. So after they kick your ass and take your scholarships and take all the things that you hold dear from Title IX and all the bennies that you fought for in the 70s, and then they get into the locker room and they flash their Johnsons in front of your face and say, and the way the Biden administration has changed Title IX and tried to change it is if you're a woman and you complain about a man with his dick in your face, he can charge you with a Title IX violation in the school. I mean, that's how bad it is. And so women are starting to wake up, and somehow, one shape, form, or fashion, they're going to try to make it our fight, which it is, because we don't want our ladies to suffer too much. But it may be too late. And I think especially if they continue to vote for the same lady who's a champion for this shit. So they're going to have to decide, is it Title IX and the future of your daughters and your sisters and their ability to have the same free spaces and opportunities as men in their own leagues and their own classrooms and their own scholarships? Or is it unfettered right to delete babies? Because the woman you guys want to vote for believes in both of those, the destruction of Title IX and the deletion of as many babies as you want. So y'all got a choice to make. But anyway, that's another thing. So let's finish on Megyn Kelly. Then I got another thing for you to say, because
to what they did. And we need to fight back.
Yes, you do.
I've often mentioned that this topic has turned me into an almost single issue voter. And I did predict that this would be a critical topic in the 2024 race. Didn't realize it would take quite so long, but better late than never. Finally, these Republicans are waking up to the fact that the electorate is not in favor of this stuff. Not Democrats or Republicans, never mind independents. In fact, according to an article that just dropped, it was October 8th in the New York Times, the Trump campaign's most aired ad in recent weeks about Kamala Harris has been along these lines.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
All right. So you guys get the message, right? You guys get the message. That's where we are. That's where we are. Now, a lot of people, and I'm old enough, of course, for everything these days, a lot of people don't realize how hard women fought for Title IX and what they had to do prior to Title IX and how they were being left out. I mean, Title IX IX wasn't just for sports. I mean, the world exploded for women when Title IX was enforced. And Title IX is probably one of the greatest pieces of legislation that went in for women since the GI Bill went in for returning soldiers, I believe. I really believe that. The GI Bill was huge, but for men and soldiers coming back, and maybe some women who were enlisted, but Title IX was huge for women. And now, because of liberalism and the fact that the way women vote, and the fact that they have a whole bunch of sycophantic men that follow them like, straight up pussies, it's about to be destroyed. It's about to be destroyed. And if it wasn't for the recent Supreme Court ruling, it would be enacted. And the fact is that Biden and Harris try to push it through executive action. And so it's still, it could be blocked. And things like this need to go through the House and the Senate to get really changed. They overstep their boundaries, So, okay, what does Bossman have? Okay, what does Bossman have? Is that policy for prisoners in federal custody has been existing since 2016? While Trump, listen, there's all kinds of, we can try to blame that on Trump, but the truth of the matter is, if you go dig deep in that kind of thing, it didn't happen until he was out of office, I believe. So it didn't really get enacted. So we can argue over that, but he's not pushing for that. Your people are. Anyway, so that's the we could try to pawn all of that off on Trump if you want, but it's worth talking about, because we're going to be mincing words. But before we get going, let's talk about Title IX and the impact that has, because it's all connected, right? Because Title IX, once those people who have those transitions or not transitions to get the same bennies as natural-born women used to get when they were going to college, and all those things pertaining to what men were getting when they were there. So we're going to go over to a couple of ladies, of course. One of the things you're going to notice, I'm going to say this, is that I purposely just grabbed a lot of different bites, different little clips with mostly white people in it, because I'm one of those kind of guys who wants us to understand that the world is bigger than just the color of our skin. And the things that they're saying pertains to us just like it would pertain to any other American. So don't get deterred by the white face, because what they're saying does pertain to you and your children and their ability to pursue the American way. And if the rights go away, it goes away for all of us, not just because we're Black. All right, so we're going to talk about Title IX. And this gives you a nice little beginning of what Title IX is and how it pertains to all of us.
50th anniversary of Title IX. And it is surprising and kind of uncomfortable to hear that so many college students know so little about this historic civil rights law. So as we begin our year-long celebration of this barrier-breaking federal law at We Need to Talk and CBS Sports, we had our friend and lawyer, Amy Trask, break down this landmark legislation.
When you see little girls on the playground, when you see girls and women participating in sports, competing in sports, pursuing dreams and goals in sports, know that they do so with protections afforded by Title IX, protections which didn't exist until 1972, which was when Title IX of the Education Amendment was enacted by Congress and signed into law by President Nixon. Title IX provides that if a school receives federal financial assistance, it may not discriminate on the basis of sex. If any department or program in a school receives that assistance, Title IX applies to all of that school's programs and activities. In other words, if a biology department receives a grant from the National Institute of Health, the athletic department must also comply with Title IX. While Title IX isn't limited to sports, that's the context in which it is most often referenced and discussed. As to sports, Title IX applies to recruitment, admissions, housing, counseling, financial assistance, and more. There has been a significant increase in the number of young girls playing sports since Title IX was enacted. And while Title IX may not be the only reason for this, it is certainly an important reason. And those girls you see on the playground, they may go on to compete at the collegiate level. They may ultimately become Olympians. So a strong correlation between girls and women who participate in sports and who achieve high levels of success in their careers. It is believed that this is because participation in sports is empowering and can change perceptions and attitudes about women in leadership and decision-making roles. Title IX and the protections it provides can inspire girls and women to pursue their dreams in sports and otherwise.
Well done, Amy Trask. I thought that was so just the way it explains Title IX. And look,
let me stop it there. I think that was a real good way for anybody who's not familiar with Title IX. And I was going to cut that off here, but there's a few minutes that these ladies talk about how this impacted them. But there's still some nuggets that can be gleaned from when they speak. And because they are familiar with, and they are pretty keen on what can be lost if Title IX is completely rewritten and destroyed the way it is right now. So it'll be worth listening to the ladies talk a little bit more about this. And, so just bear with it. And it's only another 3 or 4 minutes.
When we were young, we're the babies of Title IX. I don't think when I was young and my athletic playing career and quickly after high school, but when I was a track and field athlete, I used to switch with the boys in the shot put circle. They would go, I would go. So I never felt there was a separation. But looking back now, and Amy mentioned this, and how high school athletes, even if you don't go on to continue your athletic career, in your career further on, I look back. So when I was in college and I was the manager of the women's soccer team and I was the PA announcer of the field hockey team and the women's lacrosse team, that was really the basis of my career and why I'm sitting here today. And it was because of Title IX that the University of Maryland had those full teams, several of them going on to national championships. So now I could send it to you guys. We have great college athletes and an Olympic champion, which Amy mentioned as well, and the impact Title IX's had on your lives.
Well, first of all, it's very embarrassing that these people don't know what Title IX is. I mean, I'm cringing as I was watching that. But, all of us are too young to have been affected by not having Title IX.
Before.
Yeah, before. And, when I was in high school and I was thinking about what college do I want to swim in, they didn't even have women swimming or competing in any sports in the NCAAs. The women had their own association. It was called the AIAW, which stands for Association for Intercollegiate Athletics for Women. And a couple of days ago, I was talking to one of our directors, Suzanne Smith, about this. And she had sent me a picture of a postcard from a women's march she went to back in March of 2017. And it said, "We have been training our whole lives for this moment. Game on. Sincerely, the daughters of Title IX."
Yeah.
We all are the daughters of Title IX. I look at my daughter and she plays lacrosse, and a lot of her teammates have won Division I scholarships because of Title IX. That didn't happen back when I was in high school. So a lot of things have changed, and I really want to thank the people like the Donna De Veronas, the Billie Jean Kings, who really fought for us to have equality in sports.
Yeah, that's so important. There's so many layers to it, because I think when you look at Title IX, you think often about college, you think about high school, but I think about even the younger girls that are affected by this. And myself, when I was in middle school, I was playing baseball before softball, because there was only baseball teams until a certain age.
Softball team.
When I was playing basketball, I played on the boys team until there was a girls team in 7th grade. And for myself, I looked at other classmates that maybe some of those girls didn't have the skill set or the talent or the comfort in playing on a boys team or trying out for the boys team. And so prior to Title IX, 1 in 27 girls were participating in sports. Now there's 1 in 3 between the ages of 6 and 12. So 12 years old, that puts you right at about the 7th grade age. And so I can watch my nieces, I can watch younger girls that are participating so early, and it does not even cross their mind not to have an opportunity, the same opportunity as so many young boys that we often see.
And I think also in that 1 in 27 number, obviously not everybody's going to go on to be an Olympian or a professional athlete, but that those qualities, those characteristics that you build through playing sports, they're invaluable later on in life, Tina, as you mentioned, just even professionally, that confidence, that perseverance, that diligence. And when I was speaking with my mom recently about this, it's not that far removed. Like, as you mentioned, being a generation removed, they didn't even have the same opportunities in gym class. They would have, what was it, square dancing instead of organized sports and gym class. And I take that for granted all my life. And PE, we did a variety of sports. That's how I got involved in sports at 5 years old and onward. So just to be a generation removed is still, jolting in that there's still progress to be made. And you can look even just to last year with last year's women's basketball tournament and how, now, thanks to pressure, thanks to Sedona Prince highlighting that there were these inequalities last year that they're going to have that they're going to have, the branding, the promotion that they should have had all along. But it's still, a long road ahead. And I'm grateful for the progress, but we can't, take our foot off the gas here.
All right. So I think that one of the things about that was they didn't get into the real issue that Title IX has been rewritten, because I don't know exactly when that came out. But I just thought the explanation of Title IX was a good one. Again, I said this once before, women have a choice to make because I think, again, like one of the ladies said that she'd never lived in a time when they didn't have Title IX, or that she can't understand where it's going. And then she was so surprised nobody knows about it. But that's true about a lot of things about the history now that the culture and information has been gone, right? There's a lot of women who are going to vote this November and have absolutely no idea what they're going to give up because they're voting identity politics. And they haven't looked behind the veil to see what the person that they want to vote for stands for, right? And she's the one who rewrote Title IX with the president to allow men to compete with women in female sports, in their locker rooms. And it's not just competing, it's to take normally sane people and tell them just because a guy's 10-inch Johnson is out in the locker room, you must treat him just like you would treat any other woman. Do you understand how psychotic that shit really is, right? And that the laws and everything is in his favor over the women in that locker room. I don't understand how we got here, and I can't blame that on women. It's men, right? It's men's fault that happened, that, we didn't take into account, and I say we, it's really white men, right? Because black men didn't really do this. Didn't take into account that when women got the right to vote, the psychology of the way they vote is completely different than the way men vote. And I think maybe they just didn't think about that, because just like how, women think men should think like them, maybe those early assholes thought women would vote and think just like their husbands forever, and it wasn't true back then. It ain't true now, because just like when people lie, a person could tell you they're voting for one person, and when they get in that booth, they know there's no way you're going to find out how they voted. So the dichotomy is in the woman's court, right? And the problem is they don't understand the importance of Title IX and what that meant to women. So the women in the future are going to lose out. Not only in sports, you're going to lose out. Those scholarships go towards academics. Those scholarships is the door that put women in there where you didn't have to go to school if you were gifted and get into $100,000 worth of debt. That built women's confidence up to be able to compete on a higher plane than other women, to tell you the truth, right? competitive for those spots because you had a certain gift. Now they're giving that gift to men. Now you guys like to throw around the word misogyny. There's nothing more misogynistic than a man intruding into a woman's space. And let me also say that you guys don't understand this. Men are used to women intrude into our space. Matter of fact, you guys don't let us or allow us to have a space without your asses somehow intruding into how we think and what we do. Because you're nosy. Because you women project. Your guys are the controlling ones, not necessarily us. You know what I'm saying? So I just think it's so funny. How the ladies just don't understand what they're giving up, because the lady you guys want to put in the White House, and maybe not some of you, the ladies that many women who want to put in, they really don't understand what they're buying. They really don't. So I get into those arguments with some family members. Oh, you don't like her because she's a woman. I said, no, I don't like her because what she stands for. If it was a different woman, cool. It doesn't matter whether she's black or not. That was so immaterial. It doesn't matter. It's what you stand for that really matters. It's what's your policies. Anyway, let me tell you. So that's just one I leave for the women. And I want to have one more video. I got two more, but one more pertaining to this subject about the damage that censorship and the government can do to an individual. So we know what it could do to policy, but this is what it could do to individual. Now you're going to have to forgive it because this video is at RFK and it's not a long one, but you're going to have to go through some of his raspy voice. And so don't be mad that he got impairment there, but his point is very, what he's saying is very poignant. And we're going to talk about disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. Now, a lot of people ain't aware with malinformation. And all these things are going on now. And I do want to lay it on the feet of the Democrats because they're using it. But I have no delusion or illusion that whoever's in power is going to use some of that same thing. You know what I'm saying? So the people in power actually use things, but to the extent it may be a little different, but it'll be some element of it no matter who's in control. So right now, the Democrats are going to get their ass kicked by this next video, but that's okay. Hopefully it's only for another couple of months.
Point of order. I know that witnesses usually have 5 minutes. I see 10 minutes on the board. Is it going to be 10 minutes?
We'll give him 5 minutes, but we're pretty lax with this.
Let's just watch the time for all the witnesses.
And if you want to cut him off and censor him some more, you're welcome to do.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running against Joe Biden for the 2024 Democratic Party nomination. And before the Republican-led hearing into federal government censorship had even begun, members of his own party were trying to silence him.
This is a letter that many of you signed, many of my fellow Democrats. I've spent my life in this party. I've devoted my life to the values of this party. There's 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing.
The letter Mr. Kennedy referred to in his opening statement was an effort to revoke his invitation to testify.
Why would you give Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a congressional platform to spew his hatred? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a living, breathing, false flag operation.
You know what? I had for a brief second, I thought I liked Jeffries. I did. But he's just the same old, Django Calvinite as the rest of them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm so jaundiced and disappointed in Black men who the way they are in this Democratic Party, in the machine and the liberalism and all the daggone Black celebrities just selling us out to the highest bidder. It's really, really disappointing.
Others testifying over the federal government's efforts to suppress free speech included Breitbart News political editor Emma Jo Morris, Missouri former Deputy Attorney General D. John Sauer, and former New York City mayoral candidate Maya Wiley. But it was the Democrats' efforts to silence Mr. Kennedy that was the standout takeaway from the hearing.
Point of order, pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2, which Mr. Kennedy is violative of, I move that we move into executive session because Mr. Kennedy has repeatedly made despicable anti-Semitic and anti-Asian comments as recently as last week.
Aside from the letter, before members of the panel even started asking questions, Ms. Wasserman Schultz entered a motion to have Mr. Kennedy removed.
Is it the custom of this committee to censor viewpoints that we disagree with?
The motion ultimately failed, with members of the panel voting along party lines, although some were unable to resist going beyond a simple yes or no.
Yes to not censor.
Mr. Massey votes yes.
No to hate speech.
Mr. Goldman votes no.
Mr. Kennedy defended his previous statements on a variety of subjects and pushed back against claims he's racist and anti-Semitic.
Mr. Kennedy, you compared COVID public health policies to barbaric murderous tactics of Nazi Germany, saying that Jewish people in Nazi Germany had more freedom than Americans facing COVID health restrictions.
What you are saying is a lie.
Mr. Kennedy suggested many of his critics' accusations were defamatory.
I don't believe there's a single person who signed this letter who believes I'm anti-Semitic.
And he was quick to point out his own party's continued support for a policy that's clearly anti-Israel.
I have a better record on Israel than anybody in this chamber today. I'm the only person who has publicly objected to the $2 billion payout that the Biden administration is now making to Iran, which is a genocidal program.
Here at the Wall Street Journal, we don't agree with most of Mr. Kennedy's ideas, but we also don't believe in censorship. And when you suppress rhetoric you disagree with or find abhorrent, often you end up emboldening it.
The First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech that nobody likes you for.
Joe Biden came to power promising change.
Unity, 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 unity.
Instead, he's further divided the country, and few would disagree with Mr. Kennedy's call for greater civility in our political life.
We have to stop trying to destroy each other, to marginalize, to vilify, to gaslight each other. We have to find that place inside of ourselves of light, of empathy, of compassion, and above all, we need to elevate the Constitution of the United States, which was written for hard times. And that has to be the premier compass for all of our activities.
Hey, man, I thought it was poignant that he said what he said, and that I agree with it. So let me continue on to say, listen, I just thought I wanted to piece those things together. One of the things that Kennedy said in the longer form of that briefing is that 3 forms of information was used against him. Disinformation, right? Which means misleading information about what he said and what he stood for. And Wasserman Schultz was really she had no trouble in using disinformation and misinformation, which is more like wrong, erroneous information and straight out lies against him. Okay. And then he didn't coin it, but a new phrase that I never heard of is malinformation. And malinformation is information that's true, but it's taken out of context. You know, it's true, but it's taken out of context. And one of the examples I saw was they said, like, revenge porn, right? It's a lady or a guy poses nude or gets caught in a compromising situation, but it was cool with the person, but the other person uses that footage to get back at, right? Just like a lot of other, or like if a person actually deleted somebody, and that's the only part of the story that somebody says, X so-and-so deleted somebody, and they leave it there. And they don't say, well, it was in self-defense, you know, and it was proven, he was exonerated. They don't say that part of it. They just want to disparage a person. And when a person has a position, somebody can say, well, you're spewing misinformation or whatever it is. And you'll spend time saying why you're saying it's not misinformation as opposed to actually talking about the topic. You know, so that those tactics are being used all over the place. It's all over the news media today, right? You know, it's, for example, you know, we saw Harris said, I got $750 for you to people who lost everything. And then that evening she's on the teleprompter talking about, I got 150 million for everybody else. Well, is that really misinformation? Well, now, maybe not really, but the truth of the matter is all the fine print that says, well, you got to apply for the 750 and there's more coming and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you lost everything, the only thing you heard is $750. You have no means to apply for anything. You know what I'm saying? So optics matter in that point. Then you get see on TV or some newscast somewhere, we're just giving more billions of dollars to people for death and destruction. So it's a bad thing all the way around, you know. So I just thought, you know, I know this one is not salacious and all that kind of stuff, but make sure everybody hits the like button and things of that nature. But I have one more thing I want to give you guys, you know, and to BMU or anybody listening, don't worry about it. There's no copyright information or anything like that. I own it, so you can use it, and it's nobody going to check on it because it's all AI generated. And so I'm going to give something to you guys on my way out before we pay the parting credits. Wait a minute, before I go. Yeah, malinformation is a controversial term. Yeah, there you go. That removes the context. There it is. And I think we're going to start hearing more and more. But here's the real issue, Catellia, is that we need to be able to recognize all three forms of those information as individual citizens, because nobody is going to come correct those things without us doing our own research. That's where we got to get the American population to the point, and I don't know how many people are going to do this. You know, if you read something and it sounds fishy, you should go look to see if it's true or not, right? A lot of us, I've been guilty before, looking at something, just kind of in your head, kind of believing it because it's written down. And then you have to remind people, just because somebody wrote something down doesn't mean it's true. And just because somebody says something in a microphone doesn't mean that's true either. But listen, so this is your favorite baby boomer saying, okay, this is not salacious conversation, but I hope whoever listened in can think that this election is important. And if you're a woman, you have a big choice to make. If you're a man, you got a big choice to make. If you're a black man, I've said that 1,000 times. But if you're a woman, you have a real big choice to make. Is it more important to have a woman in the White House who doesn't believe in all the things you believe in, but you want that little charge of having a honey up there that looks like you, at least female-wise, or does her policies matter? And in the long run, 4 more years of unbridled, unfettered liberalism, it's going to be a lot for this country to take. And those borders are going to stay open. She's not closing those borders. She is not closing those borders. I would imagine the coup de grace is going to be that she's going to have a lot of people bust into the red states in order to try to turn them purple and eventually blue. That's the plan. That's the plan. And the way she's going to be able to get those people to vote Democrat is by feeding them as much money as she can. You know, it worked on black folks in the 60s. It'll work on the immigrants as well. They didn't give us that much money, but they just gave us handouts, right? So if it worked then, that's the plan. That's the plan. So, oh man, my whole university's calling me. They want me to donate something. I'll get back to them. They still know me at my own university after all these years, right? I've been graduated since like the early 80s. They keep coming after me. I love the University of Buffalo. Anyway, so with that, I have one more thing to show all of you folks, and I want you to listen to it because it's an ode to the baby boomers. And again, Black Man Filtered, there's no copyright issues, but you're gonna listen to it together with your boy.
In the post-war light, they took their first strides, riding the waves of a country that thrives with dreams in their pockets and hope in their eyes, built a legacy beneath the wide open skies. But the weight of the years, it's a double-edged sword. For better or worse, they've weathered the storms with laughter and pain, breaking through norms from vinyl to cyberspace. They danced on the stage, the baby boomers, a timeless page. Chasing that dream in suburban sprawl, with heartbeats of change echoing through it all. From protests and peace to texts that amaze, navigating trails through tumultuous days. With every new challenge, they rise like the sun. For better or worse, they've weathered the storms with laughter and pain, breaking through norms. From vinyl to cyberspace, they danced on the stage, the baby boomers, a timeless page. To the boomers in stories we trust, with battles they fought and dreams that adjust. For better or worse, they've weathered the storms with laughter and pain, breaking through norms. From vinyl to cyberspace, they danced on the stage, the baby boomers, a timeless page. So here's to the boomers in stories we trust, with battles they fought and dreams that adjust.
All right, so that's the ode to the baby boomers. And listen, I appreciate everybody who's in the chat. And thanks for hanging out with me for a little while. And listen, I hopefully got a little bit out of this in terms of how things piece together, how, you know, the First Amendment permeates all the things that we do. And with that, you know, there is a show later on tonight. I guess is Embrace the Grace or whatever. So stay tuned at 9:30. It's going to be another show. And, you know, enjoy it. And you know what? This is all AI generated. I just put a little bit of information in there about baby boomers, and they made me a song. So I got all kinds of songs now. So anyway, listen, let me bid all of you guys adieu. I appreciate it. And we're going to end the stream.
It's going down like a rodeo. It's going down like I told you so. It's going down like a rodeo. It's going down like I told you so. I hope you're all here for the ride. Come inside, cause it's going down tonight. Only here for one night, no lies. Come and saddle up a ride. Need a yeehaw, you know how ye. Here for one night and we just wanna party. In a fast car, a Ferrari. It's a push start, I don't need a car key. Slide on Broadway, and it's gnarly. On a late night, but I'm not tardy. Right on time for the parties and Barbies. Strolling with a chunk of green like a golf swing. Hey, 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 hey. Bottles on ice, mess around these skates. Hey, hey, hey. If I gotta say it twice, then I got nothing to say. It's going down like a rodeo. It's going down like I told you so. It's outside, cause it's going down tonight. Only here for one night, no lies, come and saddle up a ride. Come and kiss me up, it's going down. Like a train with no brakes, I'm not slowing down. See us showing up, we're showing out. Better pack